I stepped back into a different light. As community health aides in our villages, we're taught how to do a physical exam. In my village, I was the first health aide that was taught before I took the job. Many of my predecessors took the job and were taught how to care for our patients over time as our people came in the door. We're taught to be the hands, eyes, and ears of the physician who may come out to the village 3 or 4 times a year. But it's our health aides that are really providing the care for our people. We're taught how to examine the body. We're taught to put our hands on the body and feel the different parts. We're taught to look and see, and we learn what's normal, and we learn to describe what is abnormal. Oftentimes, we don't know why it's abnormal, but after you've seen a number of people, you can tell it's not right. So you talk to your physician over the phone and you tell them about these people that come into your village clinic. You provide questions from our manual that ask some basic set of questions that might help us come up with an answer to why people are having trouble. A lot of times we don't have answers. But we work as our elders before us have taught us. Our elders before us had techniques of tradition and culture, of ways of touching and healing our bodies from being taught from our elders before us. We're taught to move the internal organs. We're taught to relieve pressure points that are building up tension and to relieve pain. Some of us are taught different techniques on letting go of what they call the bad blood. These things are very important, but it's not what we're taught in Western medicine. It's not the same thing. It's a big void that's become new science in medicine. People, it's hard to go in and get care as our elders taught us, because now they have all of this technology. They want to stick you with a needle. They want to do these blood tests. They want to run these x-rays. They want to do all these other things. In our villages, we still don't have that. We rely on our hands, our eyes, our ears to share concerns from our people. I remember the first time I felt an abnormal finding in a small boy, 15 months old. I had just gone through community health aid training, and this little boy had come in for an earache. But I was taught to do a full exam, so I felt his belly, and I felt this fullness that wasn't normal. And I brought it to my coworker who was teaching me how to do the physical exam, and he says, "You're right, it does feel kind of funny." This little boy had a stomach cancer and he was sent down to Children's Hospital. I followed because I wanted to further my education. I completed my training as a community health aide. I went through the 3 sessions that at the time we were taught, 3 training sessions, and then you go to a preceptorship. And I wanted to bring this education back to our community, but I found I had so many more questions. I didn't have enough answers from our community health aid training manual, so I went to the University of Washington to become a physician assistant. But I learned that even as a small community health aid in a small village of 500 people, we can educate others about what's going on with our people. When I went to the university, they told me a baby could not be delivered in the placenta. I had just done that in our small village. I stood up and I told the practitioner who was educating us, "You're wrong. I just delivered a baby in the placenta. I had to do CPR and help the baby come back, and the baby didn't survive very long, but the baby was alive when they got on the medevac." Others that are collecting data on the importance of our health do not know who and what we are. They do not have our statistics. They have numbers that have been generated through a process of collecting data. But just as a physician told me that I did not have to record every time a mother has a miscarriage, that's wrong. We need to know each and every time we have a problem with carrying a pregnancy through. We need to tie all these different numbers together to find out what's going wrong. I asked a lot of questions because in our small village we had people who were having trouble breathing. But when you have to stay up all night and help people breathe, and you don't have anyone else to turn the keys to so they can be on call the next day, you still have to open up your door to help the people that were sick the day before. You might have to send out your labs. You might have to get some medication off the plane. You might have to do a follow-up exam and follow up with a physician to communicate about that. But in our small villages, without being able to get the physician to hear the concern in our voices, to know how hard their families are worried about this person who has been coming back and forth to the clinic, and you don't have any answers for them. It's really hard, but we keep trying because we want to find those answers. But then you find out there are so many more questions that you have to keep asking, and we still don't have answers. I went and worked with some people on this national conversation on chemical toxins. It was a really important process to do so. One of the most important things that I could bring to that process was that a person who has concerns about their health must continue to ask questions. You might have a provider who does not give you an answer, but you keep knocking on doors and you keep asking those questions, because sooner or later, there's going to be enough questions asked that we're going to find an answer to your question. The process before us has many concerns. I worked so hard on the importance of tradition and culture and the health of our people, but I could not protect my small village of 500 from the National Energy Policy Act, because they want to develop every acre around my community because that's where oil and gas is. But we are a hunting and gathering and whaling culture, and the importance of continuing to be who and what we are is important beyond every layer of importance for other decision makers. We must continue to eat our foods and plants from our lands and waters. The costs for other foods brought to our region are beyond the hours per day that we may have hopes of gaining from income. But the importance of these issues place a burden on all of us, because we have these policies that are affecting change. I asked questions because people were having trouble breathing. But I didn't ask enough questions because I had 2 little babies in my village that developed leukemia in the same year after 23 days of flaring of oil and gas. I could not prevent the decision-making process that allowed salt water to be used to make an ice road and used on our tundra in the plants that it killed in this land that is so very important to our animals, because it was profitability that stayed at the decision-making table. I could not prevent a natural gas flare from being constructed within 3 miles of our new hospital. All of the importance of talking about importance of tradition and culture and life, health, and safety could not break through decision makers that had corporate interest of profitability at the decision-making table. I've seen stomach cancers, I've seen skin cancers, I've seen kidney and liver cancers, I've seen leukemia, I've seen stomach cancers, I've seen bone cancers. A small village of 500, you ask, how could we be seeing so many things when the doctors on the phone say, You're such a small village, it can't be that. But yet these things are occurring. The decision-making profit has to take into account the health of our people and the future of our generations, and not just the profitability of the jobs that may come from changing our lands and waters. As a health aide, I worked only 14 years, and I saw many cases of cancer. But my niece has now taken over working in our village clinic, and she's only had 7 years, but she's seen 3 times the amount of cancer cases that I have seen. She suffered with those 2 little boys that developed leukemia and the loss of one. We all suffered in that loss. The process before us must continue to build the importance of the individual's health. We have a system of health care, but it's not meeting our needs. We must raise these standards for the future generations. All of us are here to do good work, but not everyone is there to do good research and good work. But we must work in the process before us. Our communities must own the research and the data points. Our research cannot be used against us in the guise of traditional ecological knowledge, owned research by others that manipulates the data to be used against us. That's not acceptable. But I've spent the last few years defending against our own traditional ecological knowledge. We must be engaged in this process for the generations. It's got to be done on a multi-generational process. I took my granddaughter with me to the National Institute of Health and an institutional review board that worked on communities, disasters, and research, because she needs to see how hard I work in this process. She needs to meet some of these people that are working in these different issues, because the data sets that were collected on people in my age group, I'm fighting to access that data. It tells us about contaminants in our blood, but others have control of that data. That's not right. But the importance of my granddaughter's health concerns are a part of our history and the historical trauma of the past, decisions that have been made, and it's affecting all of our daily lives and the health of our children. You all know how important it is because you came to this important meeting today, and we must work together to change so that the policies and procedures that are the best practices are incorporated to be done in ways to affect the health of all of our future generations. Thank you.